to at one point in time, probably more than once. More than once, I looked at the budget and thought, this is a great budget, until you have to think about who's paying for it, and then it becomes a little bit different. And so I feel that we consistently worked throughout this process to get where we are. It's not a budget, I said this the other night, it's not a budget about growth or innovation or creativity, but I don't know that this is a year that we could have done that, quite frankly. This is the year that we had to take a look at what our key drivers were, work within those limitations and those parameters to produce a budget that we felt we could get past our three communities. Going to the next page. Key considerations for us in this process. The first was the forensic audit findings. The second was the MASBO audit recommendations, and the third was the administrative and the school committee recommendations. I'd said this before, but I want to say this again. The two key components with the audits, the forensic and MASBO, really helped lay a solid pathway for us. And I know I've said that before, I'm saying that again this evening. It laid a very solid pathway for us as Pat and I walked through this, because we started to make changes just shortly after I came on stream, and as these findings and recommendations came out, we continued to do that. And so, for example, when you take a look at the budget now, even how we would have done offsets, there's a line there that used to have a large number on it that isn't even there now. So those are kind of indicators that of changes that we've made as a result of some of these findings and recommendations. The administration was involved consistently, and I said this last time and I say this again. We had Joan DeAngela sit in on many of our meetings as a voice for pre-K, K, and special education. And so she's here tonight if there's some questions that you might have. Same with Cindy Maxfield. I'd ask Ms. Cindy Maxfield as well, who oversees our pre-K. So if there's some other questions that come out of this that you want to turn to them, they're certainly here to help answer that. But as a team, we were involved on every level. Suchi, for example, and Cindy were heavily involved in our computers and technology section. Jeff Converse and Pat sat for countless hours with regards to facilities, and our principals were all heavily involved. So everyone on our administrative team was involved multiple times in our process to have us land where we landed tonight. Even today, we had a full administrative team meeting. This room is packed when that whole team is in here, and we reviewed it one final time today as a collective body. Stakeholder involvement for us, so obviously district personnel, our school committee, and this year our town leadership. Of the three communities, I said this to our FinCom members the other day, when I take a look back and say, what were things that we did right, what are things that we take a look at for improving for next year, as we create a tickler file for next year, because honestly, and I said this the other night as well, we've already started to think about FY19 and FY20 as a result of some of the deep dives that we had to do here. And I'd also point that out too. Some of this, we got in so deep and we said, we cannot deal with all of this in this fiscal year. We're going to have to put it off because we want to be thoughtful. And I know that we've used that word a lot. We're going to use it again tonight. We want to be thoughtful about our processes. The town's leadership was one of those things that I would say that was a do-again from my perspective. It was almost every time we had a school committee meeting, we would reach out and reconnect with our town administrators. And I think that was just invaluable. And I know that Don Lowe is here tonight from Bolton. But throughout, our three towns have had involvement, given us guidance, given us suggestions. I would definitely do that again next time around. That was just absolutely invaluable to us. It was great guidance. When we take a look at the bottom line numbers, which is really what everybody is always looking for, last year the budget was $50,319,249. The budget for FY18 is $52,076,385, an increase of 3.49%. One of the things I did is I looked back over your 10-year history, and 3.49 is very well within the averages that you've had over the last 10 years. You've had some years where it's been really, really high, just a couple that have been low, but quite frankly, this is right in the middle of what your averages have been. if you look at it from a really simplistic perspective, and that's not at all how I'm suggesting you look at it tonight, but a school district our size generally should have about an increase of about 1.2, 1.5 million every year, just as a result of our size, contractual obligations, benefits, and that kind of thing. If you did not one more thing and just looked at that, which is why it is problematic when you're trying to add things or add positions along the way, because you already have that contractual obligation component that sits in front that drives everything. And so that was really what our problem was in terms of going back and saying, what do we really need? What can we afford? What are the priorities? And that's what drove this. Over to the next page. Thank you. The assessments remain unchanged, effective tonight. Now, if the school committee decides to do something different tonight, then those numbers may change, including the bottom line number. But right now, again, Bolton sits at 3.86% differential, Lancaster at 4.61%, and Stowe at 4.23. These are the numbers that we gave out the other night. Over to the next page of highlights. We worked very hard to maintain level funded school budgets. And I've said this before, but I think it bears repeating tonight. And I think for the public to understand that we did not go in to make cuts inside of schools. So we basically level funded, and if there was something that one school really needed over another, if we were able to do it, we did that. Okay, so the schools themselves really weren't touched in terms of that kind of thing as we worked through different reductions or possible scenarios and shifts of staff. There are minimal staff shifts. Notice that I'm not saying there aren't any. There will be, but it's minimal staff shifts when we look at the end of all of this. Each school in each cost center, from my perspective right now, has what it needs to move itself forward next year. So there's no cost center or school that we had to take a huge hit, that we devastated with regards to pulling away and reducing numbers. So I feel very comfortable tonight. I mean, would we like more? Of course we would, but that wasn't the reality that we were dealing with. So we feel very, very comfortable that each school and cost center has what it needs. The administrator priorities, particularly with, for example, the high school, and I'll go through this. The high school, for example, really wanted an additional staff member for guidance. That was an absolute priority. So that was something that's baked into this budget. So those key things that were absolutely administrative priorities, we brought them back in. They gave us different lists, and we would whittle them down each time and took the top priorities from each building and tried to give them what they were looking for. So you'll see as I go through the next sheets what that amounted to. So the highlights of what's included in here, and I know that I'm not going to go through all the page work because you've seen this multiple times. So tonight I just felt this was a synopsis. And of course we're almost 10 minutes in after 6.
All right, take your time.
The new ELA initiative funds for the district-wide work is still in there. That's something that everybody on the administrative team felt strongly about maintaining. So that is still in there. The funds to support, you remember that we put $10,000 into a line for Donna Lindstrom's office to help support work thereafter as a follow-up to the Emerson study. And so that is still in there. There's the additional guidance staff for the high school. You'll remember that Hale had 3, if you remember those yellow sheets in the binder, had 3 different positions that they really wanted to take to a full-time position. And we have all 3 of those going to a full-time position, and that will really help with their scheduling. So I'm very, very pleased that we were able to do that for Hale. You'll remember that the custodial support in each community and the high school to support weekend activity was something that we put kind of mid-year, but we managed to maintain that. So that's in this budget as well. You'll also remember that mid-year we did the 3 shared accounting staff to support the food services, extended day, facilities, and the business office, and those positions remain in here. So we didn't shift those at all. You'll also recall that I had said that I made no cuts to what was asked for in SPED, so I'm putting that out there on the table as well, including there are 2 additional SPED programs that we're looking at, primarily at Florence Sawyer and Center for next year. And again, Joan is here if you wanted to ask her any additional questions with regards to that. And not to leave Lancaster out, we actually are piloting some work in Lancaster this year that's going to continue on with special education. But it wasn't a monetary thing that we needed to include in the budget. It was more about a philosophical thing, philosophical perspective. And quite frankly, it's working very well. We're very excited about some of the work that's happening in Lancaster right now. The athletic director, the fiscal support position, you'll recall that was a half-time position, and it kind of found its way in and out and in and out as we were going through. And I think at the end of it, we just felt very strongly that we needed to keep that position in there. And in part, but this wasn't the only driver, but in part it was also as a result of the MASBO and the audit, the fiscal audit that Sullivan had done, and said, because it's a lot of money that goes in and out of that office, and we just felt strongly that we needed somebody in there in a part-time position who could help us to monitor and report appropriately back up to us. The last one that I would point out is the additional grade 4 teaching position at Florence Sawyer, and I know that I said this last time, but I'm going to say this again as well. I'm so appreciative to the policy committee for changing that policy to allow us these types of moments. You know, in some other districts, that might not have been seen as a priority, but in our district, we felt it was a priority given the challenges and the size of that particular class. Although it didn't hit a tipping point in terms of numbers, it did in other ways. And so we feel very comfortable in the fact that we're able to add an additional teaching staff at the grade 4 level there. And that will also keep appropriate staffing at the grade 5 level. And so we're not having to shift staff there. So very, very happy about that. So those are, in a nutshell, the key salient points of this budget. What I've not put in here tonight is any additional funds that may have been raised through any increases in tuition. That's not in here, and I leave that to Chairman Ramasco to do any follow-up with or not, or how you want to approach that. So that's in a nutshell kind of where we're at tonight, which is not a whole lot different than where we've been probably the last 2 meetings, to be honest with you.
So thank you so much for doing that. Before I take comments, I think it's really important to point out that even given some of the constraints that we've had to work within, and you know, kudos to the finance subcommittee and you, specifically you and your staff, for getting us to a point where the assessments, although I respect what Lancaster's dealing with right now, but for the budget as a whole, to get us to a point where we can understand it and it's within the range of what makes sense right now. But I also think it's important for people to understand that we've also been able to find money that was tucked away in the budget to add some pretty important positions. And specifically, we spent a lot of time, we spent what, $30,000 on, you know, audits this year. But what that allowed us to find out was that we weren't necessarily handling revolving accounts, like you said, with all that money that was coming in and going out appropriately or efficiently or best practices, whatever you want to call it. So we've been able to find money in that budget to be able to bring those people in, to keep a closer eye on that, to be more respectful of it so that we know where the money is going, when it's coming out, and that it's specifically dedicated to those programs instead of being dispersed throughout the budget. And I think that that's important to understand. And then a couple of the other new positions, the guidance person at the high school, we keep hearing about social emotional needs, we keep hearing about stress. The Emerson study tells us about stress. I'm hoping next year we're going to be able to broaden a program to do more. But I'm happy with a lot of the ads we've been able to pull out of the budget too. Next year, I think we're all looking forward to, okay, can we now do some really cool, funky stuff? And we'll ask you to come in as a guest speaker. All right, so I'm going to turn it into, I'm not going to turn it into anything. It is what it is. Just a couple of things on the budget hearing and how this is a little bit different. And typically when there are citizens' comments in a school committee meeting, our policies dictate how we handle those citizens' comments. But this is a little bit different. So are there people in the audience that have comments they'd like to make? One? Questions or comments, absolutely. 3. Okay, perfect. So we're still going to follow our policies to a degree in that please wait till you're recognized. Ask your question. You'll have an opportunity to get an answer in the hearing. And then the only thing I would ask is if someone's asked that question, if you need clarification, that's fine, but not to ask the same question, just so we can keep things moving, okay? So first, there's a lady in the room, so could you tell us what your name is and where you're from?
Yeah.
Oh,
Liz
hi.
Camilleri. I'm a parent. And this is not a big educational question, so this should be an easy one. I was just looking over this, and I came to the under facilities, the electricity category. It's, unless I'm totally reading this wrong, it looks like it's being cut by 80%. Is that possible, or have we done like fantastic do we have new systems, or am I reading this wrong? And I was just curious.
And I don't know if Pat's there, if you want to take part of that, if you want to start that, and there, you know, let me kind of start this, and then Pat, if you can take it. There were some areas in our budget, you know, that the previous year's budget, which is exactly what we're referring to, where there were some numbers that we took a look at this year and said, well, what are the actuals? What are the actuals of the dollars that we're actually spending in this area? And we didn't build this budget on, gee, this is what we had last year, let's just up it 3% or 5% or 10% or 12% or whatever. We took a look at the actuals, and as Pat said to our administrative team today, there isn't a line on that budget that we did not go through and examine thoroughly. If there is a dramatic cut, it could be for any number of reasons. It could be because that may have been, for example, the forensic audit had suggested that there was more money in the budget than was needed. And that may well have been, and I think Pat's going to confirm, that may have been one of the areas where there was money that maybe we didn't need quite that much money. And so when we were taking a look at the actuals and the expenditures to date, this was a number that we said, you know what, this makes sense. Now next year, it may blow us right out of the water, and we'll come back and have to do something differently. But right now, that would be, that's my first response. Pat, am I missing anything on that, or does that pretty much sum it up?
I would say that pretty much sums it up, that some of these things that we changed were basically because of, the way that we looked at the expenditures and the accounts and
So
Yeah.
based on actuals versus estimates.
Right.
So we just haven't been spending this. We've
That's
had this
correct.
in the budget and haven't been. So I was going to say, could you come to my house and do this?
No.
That's a great question, though.
Yeah, it is a good question.
Because just today on the radio, NPR was saying that National Grid approved a 7% or wants to a 7% increase in electricity. So maybe you should write that down.
Pat, you might want to make a note on
Some
that.
of us are pushing for the rechargeable batteries to be attached to the kids when they
Yeah,
go.
what are the desk pedals? Like
Yeah, that
underneath, you know?
All right, so, gentlemen,
Yeah, I'm Don Hawks, Selectman in Stowe, and our Board of Selectmen's liaison to Neshoba, which I've had the honor of doing for the last couple of years. This year is more of an honor than other years. Let me just lead in with that. Just a comment on that, as to Stowe, we are in a different advantageous position on power than those of you to the west of us. We are serviced by Hudson Municipal Light, and so far this year, the rates have gone down 18%. That's as a result of the nuclear power plant going, the bond is now, Seabrook is offline. Other economies have been put in, and if there's a new power substation redundancy line put in, it will go down another 5%. So at least maybe that'll offset some of what you're going to have in the rest of the district. But just for my own comments, it is not a question, it is a comment, and I've been, I have a daughter who some of you know, who is now at Clark University and went her whole school career through Stowe schools and then Neshoba High School, and it gave her a very good grounding in where she is going. I've been a selectman now for 5 years, and but I certainly was a backbencher at town meetings for the past 34 years. And I spent a lot of time gnashing teeth, and I have teeth marks in my tongue that I won't show you from prior experiences. My liaison role has given me access to a different perspective this year, as particularly sitting in on some of the finance subcommittee meetings, which I've been extremely impressed with. Kudos to, and I won't say it just because one of them is from Stowe, but they've done an excellent job and open to all sorts of things. As public officials, we are quick to criticize, and sometimes when things are going right, we stay home. I didn't want to do that tonight. I want to present kudos to all of you folks, particularly from your committees and the staff and the administration working so closely together. I've seen it in practice. We had what we call an all boards meeting last night. We had the chairman of our finance committee is here tonight as well. He was participating in that, where the major boards dealing with the finance aspects of the town meet with the board of selectmen at a regular scheduled meeting, which was televised in Stowe last night. You can watch it on YouTube if you want to, if you double check. But our town administrator spoke so highly of one of the things that he's been there 25 years, and he's seen a lot of Sturm and Drang associated with the shoulder. And he was extremely laudatory for the comment that Superintendent Clenchey has already referenced. Said almost every week she calls me. I said, amazing. And it's this line of communication and taking suggestions, two-way street. So I'm just going to sum up go a little bit philosophical here, or if you'll allow me just for a very short moment. It's a quote from Dwight Eisenhower. Some of you remember. A lot of you remember him from history books. I remember.
He's a baseball player.
I remember as a president. He once said, "People talk about the middle of the road as though it were unacceptable. Actually, all human problems, excepting morals, come into the gray areas. Things are not all black and white. There have to be compromises. The middle of the road is all of the usable surface. The extremes, right and left, are in the gutters." You guys have taken, not the high road, yes, you've taken it in a high manner, but you have taken the usable surface, the middle of the road. I know it's been difficult, but I, for one, as a public official, on the record, on camera, and everything else, at town meeting when time comes in our town, will speak very highly of the process and the end result. So I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Don. That means a lot to me, and it means a lot to us. I thank you so much for those comments. So respected.
Thank you, and keep running. We need all the help we can get. All right, thanks. I really appreciate that. We all do. Brian, Boyle, Bolton, Advisory.
Thanks for doing all the hard work.
I figured.
I just had a quick clarification, and I'm sorry if you covered this on Monday, but did you just say, Superintendent Clenchey, at the end of your presentation, that these numbers don't include any of the tuition changes that were voted?
The other night, that's absolutely correct. And that was absolutely purposeful, and that was at the direction of the chair, and for all the right reasons, I've got to tell you, because I think what was so important to us, Brian, is that nobody ever felt that we were balancing the budget on the back of individuals, right? And so, but we were honest and transparent and said, listen, we've got 3 particular programs here that are not cost neutral at all. And so we wanted to put it out there. An extended day, for example, even as a result of the forensic audit, is now basically parked outside of the general ledger. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I was saying examples of work that we've done throughout the process and what's been driving this. So I think it was absolutely purposeful that we did not do it. So no, those numbers are not in what's presented tonight.
So I just want to, you and I talked in the past, I think it's important that the work that we were doing here was looking at what is in the budget, understanding what is in the budget, is it appropriate, and does it make sense? That whole discussion was truly a philosophical discussion that we probably needed to have had a couple of years ago. But regardless, that sits over there. It really is taking responsibility for the current budget.
Well, I can't say it as well as he did, but I've been really impressed by the process. I think he's done a great job.
Thank you so much. Neil?
It's important to note that there's still a second year that has to be gone through to really get the budget well under control, because, I mean, we've got groupings or silos, whatever you want to call them, that need to be drilled down a lot deeper
Yes.
than we're able to, the time allowed and so forth. But the forensic audit was able to give the administration a lot of places to look and make some significant changes. And that's part of what I think FinCom with the administration, we're all going to be really looking into those silos to just get a better picture on everything too. So there is a 2.0 to that.
Yeah.
If I could just bring on that, an example, Brian, would be our athletic department. I mean, it's just too big for us to, and again, we wanted to be thoughtful about our process. To have just rushed through that would not have felt good to me. And so, but we've started the conversation, and that feels good.
Okay, Mr. Lowe.
I think we all knew I couldn't sit here without saying something, but I just wanted to say that I have been a town administrator 25 years, I have been 8 years though. Actually 8 years today. I know it looks longer than, it's 8 years today. And I wanted to acknowledge the collegial approach in which Superintendent Clenchey has approached the towns, certainly our town, and I see it with the other towns as well. It's very welcome. Clearly working, as partners, which is a nice feeling to have. And so I want to say thank you to you, but knowing that there's going to be different faces at this table before you know it, I just wanted to say that all 8 members of the school committee, I think, should be acknowledged for working as hard as they have, because anyone who's been close to this process, and I have, knows how hard all 8 of the school committee members have worked. I mean, I'm a former school committee member, I know what it takes. I've worked on boards that were highly functioning, and I've worked on boards that weren't so highly functioning. And all 8 of you are you're dedicated to trying to do the right thing for the school district, for the students, and all the different components, the administrators, the teachers, and the residents who pay the bills. So I just think you should, sometimes when you're in the middle of something, you don't take a step back and look at what you've accomplished, and I think you should take a step back and look what you've accomplished, because you've had an extremely impressive year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Don.
And I see another guest.
Hi.
Hi, do you have a question, or?
No, I didn't have, I don't think so.
You don't think
I
so?
don't think so. I do like the OPEB start on that, but I understand that's just a start. I can echo what's been said from I've been Chairman of Stowe FinCom for five years now, and the communication from our rep and from everyone is so much better than it's been. So that's a good start right there. And recently the news has been better as well. But I I'll echo what I said last night, and I hope I said it properly. But in Stowe, I'm sure it's similar in the other towns, the school budget is roughly 3 times the size of our municipal budget. So whatever we do on that side is dwarfed by what you guys do. So really appreciate the effort and the result of bringing down that first number into something that is still, I mean, it's now going up at the rate of what our levy capacity is. So we're like one wrong year away from ending our record of no overruns. But that's meant as a compliment for the work you're doing now, but just to underscore how big an impact it has.
Appreciate that. And, I just want to make a comment about the OPEB, because we did commit to not only a perspective, but but an approach. And we will still do that. But, you know, thoughtful is the word, because rather than say we're going to fund it here, we need to make sure that whatever that commitment is that we adopt is sustainable. And in order for us to identify that, there was a gentleman that the superintendent met with and invited Neil to meet with as well. We need to bring him into the school committee because he's a wealth of knowledge. So before we start making commitments, we need to gather up the information, look at what's reasonable, but also recognize that heavy responsibility, which we do. So we are going to get there, and I hope at this point when we all say we're gonna do it, you see that we really will do it, we will get there. Okay?
Part of that OPEB discussion, we were talking about this morning, it's gonna take the towns, actually, we can't make that decision in a vacuum, just because there are as you know. And so, the idea is probably to actually have, you know, representatives from the towns in on the conversation so that there's a free flow conversation, we can all reach some sort of consensus where things are gonna work. I think that's where we figured the best process.
That's great. Yep, really well said.
And one of the things, if I can just respond to, I remember when I first went into the approach this year, because this is a different approach than I've ever used. And I remember saying to Lorraine at the time, I'm really nervous about putting out publicly, and Dawn and I had many conversations on this, putting out that 8%, which was where it first started. And I remember Dawn and I saying, and Dawn saying to me, you know, the first number that you put out there, that's the number that, remember that conversation? That's the number people are going to remember. And I remember saying to Lorraine, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous about taking this approach. And it felt a little overwhelming at times because I said, you know, I don't ever want it to look like people think that we don't know what we're talking about. In fact, it's just the opposite. We're digging deeper in every one of these little holes or these silos and coming up with things. But what I so respected about our town administrators and certainly like Bill and Dawn and Ryan as well, is that they also got it with me. Like when we would sit there, they all got it, and they all said to me, it's okay for you to continue to go down this pathway. And so exactly, Dawn used the word partner. I felt I had partners in the communities going with me, as well as these partners, as well as a great admin team. It gets no better than that. It really doesn't. So I'm so respectful because it was one of those like, taking a step out on a limb and saying, man, I don't know if this is the right approach or not, but you know what, I think I would do it again.
And she did say it a lot.
I
She had a lot of encouragement to open it up and let everyone see it's okay, it's okay. All right, so are there any other questions, comments from the community on the public hearing portion? And if not, we'll close the FY18 budget hearing out and open the regular school committee meeting, and I'll call that to order at 6:34. So there are several items on the agenda, our regular agenda. I don't know if any citizen has a comment on any of those items. And if not, we're going to move into some new business. We've got 2 items there. One is bus route concerns reporting process update. That's a mouthful.
So I believe, is Darcy here? And Darcy, we'll get you to come
on up
forward
to the
here,
table,
please, to the
Darcy.
table. So just ever so briefly, you know, I remember when I first came in and Darcy and I were talking about busing, and Darcy said, you know, we probably only get about 5 complaints a year, maybe 6 complaints a year. And so she said, we're okay to handle this, and you know, she's really the #1 person that helps to oversee how we deal with complaints or concerns about busing. We also took a different approach this year. Right at the very beginning, we spoke with our principals about this, and we said it doesn't make any sense from our perspective that I'm the one that's out driving these routes. When you know the families, you know the routes, you've got a relationship established, it makes much better sense for you to deal with it. So our principals really became the key focal points of some of these complaints and dealing with some of the issues, and that's worked incredibly well for us. But one of the things that we felt, and it gets back to, I was going to use this word when you're talking about the dollars and such, gets back to accountability. And how do we track this? How do we track complaints? How do we know who's calling in? How do we know if we're even following up on this? Like, we're saying, okay, we're handing it over to the principal, but then how do we do the follow-up? Like, we've got to put something better in place. So then Darcy had a wonderful idea, so I said, you know what, why don't you come and let the school committee know where you're at with this, and let's talk about this, and let's get this online. So Darcy, I'll turn it over to you.
So I did a little digging around at what other districts do as well. I did handle buses for a previous district before I came here. And always my first question was, how are you related to this student? Because I always find we get a lot of helpful people in our districts that want to fix the bus stop, whether it relates to them or not. So in our research as well, that is one of the first things we did. So we have a new form that I'm hoping will go live this week. Tech actually banged out the form for me in about an hour. It's actually a Google Doc. It will be live. It will feed directly into a spreadsheet, just like when you guys did that teacher survey, I think not too long ago.
Yep.
It will track everything. It will be the parent's name, their email, what their concern is, their contact information, how they are related to the student. It will also track our response time. So there will be a spreadsheet tracking it. So if the same parent doesn't get the response they wanted, if the principal doesn't respond back to them in time, we will have a clear record of all of that. We have also set up a new email account. I believe it's transportation@nrsd.net. So that will be their other line to contact that as well if they're not getting the response they wanted. So we did change things this year. So their first line, as always, is the bus company directly. They have that Versatran, I believe is what it's called, is the software. That is their first line. When they are not happy with the bus company, we ask them to contact the principal. From the principal, it is going to be now the form, because we want a written request. We want to know exactly what it is you're looking for from us, because that's the other problem. They call, they tell us it's a problem, but they're not telling us what they want. We just know they want something moved, they want it changed. It's not a why, it's not a how come. It's, we're not getting enough information, and it's frustrating at our end, it's frustrating for the parents. It upsets everybody. After that, they can always use the new email we've set up, and then they're going to have another contact in the office. We have someone who started fairly new. We are showing her the ropes of the buses, so she will be a contact, and they can also contact me as well. And then hopefully it doesn't really make it quite that far up the chain. We have it resolved, fixed. I think the biggest problem we had this year, we had it fixed within 2 or 3 days, and we had to flip the whole entire route around. I think sometimes parents don't quite realize how much work actually goes into the route, how big of a change it is. We literally had to change kids' bus times from 6:30 to 7 for some kids, and some backwards to 6:30. So there does, a lot of thought does go into these. So we have to make sure everyone is on board before this new system goes into place, including the bus company, all the principals. Everybody has to know what it is. And we're going to fix the whole page on our website, so we'll have the steps for them.
So that was what my question is. So 2 things with letting them know. Are you good?
Mhm.
Okay. First of all, I think I would like you to get something out to the community to let them know, because when a parent has a bus issue, they really aren't sure where to go. If there's a new system, a new URL, a new whatever you're going to put on that page, if you please send out something to all the parents to let them know, you have an issue with your bus, this is where you go and this is what you do. So that's one. And then the second one is, when they go into this system, and I notice at the top, it says, you deal with urgent issues first. All non-urgent issues are handled in the order they're received. But still, I'm a parent, and I still don't know what that means. Is that a week? Is that 2 weeks?
Our turnaround's usually a day or two, depending. Now, we did have an ongoing one right now. It just happens when she emails, not an excuse at all. She always catches me during payroll. It never fails. I'm actually going to ask her to test it. She is going to be one of my test ones. That particular one, Perry has spoken to her this week as well. She seemed quite happy to have spoken to him. They had a nice conversation. It turned out it was not for her child. She did have some questions. Perry very politely asked her to have the whole street email him. He said he would love to talk to everyone. He said, but it is the end of February and I've not heard from one person. And when we ran the numbers on that stop, there's 11 children. 6 of them are 11th and 12th graders. So realistically, we don't even know how many kids, we can find out, I shouldn't say that, but how many actually get on the bus at that stop. there are 5 that are obviously lower grades.
Yeah.
One had a sibling in the higher grade, so it's one of those, there might only be a couple kids there.
Yeah.
We did change it for her, obviously for the lower level kids. But until we get that phone call from an actual parent or the child themselves, if they are high school level, they are more than welcome to contact the school or us themselves and say, hey, my bus stop I'm not comfortable at, could you please look into this for me? We would love to have the kids do that.
So that's good. I think one of the questions or one of the requests I would have, and maybe this isn't doable, is to give them a window. I don't care if it's 48,
Sure.
72, just an expectation, because otherwise you don't know. Okay.
We were also looking at too, if they do the email or whatnot, to have an auto response that we receive their message.
Perfect.
And that's what we're doing, especially at the start of school, when those,
Perfect.
we ran into an issue this particular past school year where one of the local newspapers ran the routes without asking us.
Oops.
And they had already been changed on our website. If they call and ask, I've always told them, please just direct them to our website. It's the most up to date, not when you get them when they first come out and then all the kindy parents are changed, or this is changed, that's changed. It just tends to, it upsets the parents of the younger kids.
All right, so does
More
anybody
than
have
anything.
questions?
Yeah, so
Yeah?
protocol has been, I'm sure you know, it's been not to even call the district, but to call the bus company and the liaison, I think, Ms.
Yeah.
Jansky or
Yeah, we
something,
got a
called
problem.
them.
Instead.
And then that never really seemed to work out. And then it's just the first layer.
Yeah, we gotta, we, yeah,
It was
Neil's
a great
right.
way to get somebody really angry for that
Yeah.
second phone call, you know?
Yeah, they usually call me next. So.
Because it was typically not resolved and it just started the swirl. So if that can be alleviated,
Sure, we can look, I believe too, the bus is up for,
it is, the contract.
so it might not even,
Right.
we could get somebody new in the office as
Well-
well. So it is definitely something to
Well,
keep in
Darcy,
mind.
thank you for handling this. Thank you for taking it on. Let us know how the test goes, because I'm sure it'll be welcomed by the parents, and certainly some of us who are aware of some of the issues will appreciate it too. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darcy.
Okay, the next item is the superintendent's mid-year cycle. You can, well,
I can
good.
do it. I can
I'm
do
glad
it
you
quickly.
can do it.
So I wasn't sure, I don't have anything written tonight, but if you'd like me to do something written, I don't need to, that's great. So I'm going to ask Suchi and Cindy Larson to come to the table as well. We're going to talk about a couple of quick things here. I said just about 3 minutes is all I need from you tonight, and I know that we've got a couple of our staff here tonight, so thank you so much for hanging on just for a little bit longer, Joan and Cindy, just in case the school committee needs you for any questions on kindergarten or pre-K when we're done my section. So one of the student learning goal that I had was basically to develop and implement a plan to support the transition for the 4th and 8th grade students district-wide to the computer-based assessment. And so Cindy and she have done a lot of work on this. She, of course, is much more involved in the actual operations, and so he's really the fellow that's behind, do we have enough bandwidth? Do we have enough hardware, software? Can we cache this stuff appropriately? And so he really is more of the mechanics component of that. Cindy takes the lead in basically the instructional component and making sure that everybody is ready for this, whether it's the proctoring, whether it's the giving the actual assessment that day. And I mean, this has been an extensive process. I mean, I think it was yesterday too, right? We had all of our principals in here working. This has been ongoing all year. So Cindy, I'm going to turn it over to you really quickly. And I said to Chi, you may not even end up having to say anything tonight, but just come and support us, and we're good with that.
He's going to hold my hand.
So Cindy, we're going to turn it over to you. Let us know where things are at, although you and I both talked, so I'm good.
You're
Yes.
on.
Oh, it's a little blurry. So the state is moving towards computer-based testing and has been for a while. And Neshoba is a little late. I think we're on the 40% that hasn't done the computer-based test yet. We did do pilot it on paper-based last year with a very small percentage of students. But what the state is saying, I just wanted to make everyone aware that the next generation or computer-based testing is supposed to be a stronger standards alignment. So it's going to be aligned to the standards have been updated. The new item types address more deeply, assess the skills and knowledge of the students. Instead of just memory, it really asks them to dig down, writing to text, those types of things. And it's more informative, it'll give us more information about how ready they are for the next level of work or college or career. So, the state has laid out some, I don't know if you want to call them mandates or, oh, thank you. And this year, they're mandating that all schools start online testing, computer-based testing with grades 4 and 8. Next year, grades 4, 5, 7, and 8. And by 2019, essentially all the students, grades 3 through 10, will be taking their assessments online. So in order to get prepared for that,
When you say assessments, are you talking purely MCAS?
yes.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. I'm
Purely
sorry.
MCAS.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I probably should have put that on the first slide.
Okay, just,
So we need to prepare our students, we need to prepare the educators, we need to prepare the administrators, the principals, and we need to prepare our technology. Those are those 4 areas that G and I have been working on. And
Should I work that sheet?
Show me how to work this. Oh, I just did something.
No, I
Carolyn.
didn't.
You just click it one more time. Great. So students, with the tech skills, so the PARC online test, practice tests have been online for a few years, so the kids have been out there practicing with that. The teachers have been doing that, and just recently, the state put out the new MCAS practice ones online. But in October, we had the kids go out with the practice PARC test with the instructional technology specialists in the room and the teachers in the room, and looking at 2 different things. How are they dealing with the content, and how are they dealing with all the new technical skills that they have to do? So the writing skills, the drag and drop, and all of that. And then I pulled all the ITS back together, and they said it went very, very well. And they really weren't concerned about our kids, especially the grade 8, because they had the Chromebooks in their hands. The assessment with the grade 4 was, the grade 4 students opted to have a mouse, so we purchased all mice for the Chromebooks, so they'll have that advantage. The keyboarding they've been doing, we've been increasing the keyboarding, spending time with more with grade 4 students, getting them ready. The state puts out what their expectation should be to take these online tests, and we're well within those parameters. I know. They actually say, that a 3rd grader should be typing, so many words per minute, but we've made it all. We test them, we have the software, and we do it, and the kids are really good about it. So, then the educators, they have also been looking at the new assessments, and ELA have been doing the writing to text, that's multiple text online, and having to respond to that. And the next generation math assessments, the good news is that Envisions, the new math program that we use, uses the exact same application as the MCAS generation test nav. So that's a really good thing. The grade 8 math teachers have been getting together all this year in the early release PD and designing and focusing on developing new generation math assessments for the kids, so they've been trading on that. Oh, you're good at this. And then principals, core principals. The only thing that's been a little bit difficult in this whole thing is that the state has just been a little bit behind in putting out the resources that you need to train staff to get them prepared. Because even though schools have been doing PARC, we have now moved to MCAS online. So there's changes in that. We're using the same system, but the questions change, some of the ways that they set up and behind the scenes, the way you develop the sessions change. And so even right before vacation, I went with the principals to a training in Marlboro, their first face-to-face training on it. And it can be overwhelming if you've never done it before, but we're in a good position now. We will use 2 hours of March 10th full-day PD to train, key people that will be doling out the assessment and, proctoring the assessment and everything. So I think we're in a good place with that. So that's been a lot of work. And as I said, as Brooke said, I've been meeting with the principals and she's been meeting with the principals. It's been, they're fantastic. We have some really great principals. Yeah, so. And then the infrastructure is something that she knew that was going to come down the pipe. So last year he tested all the Chromebooks and he tested the caching server and made sure that he knew, even though we weren't going to do it, why not do it a year in advance and just test everything out? So and then he looked at the wireless access points and the bandwidth and everything while we were doing some testing, and it looked pretty good. And then he made those adjustments to the infrastructure over the summer. We'll continue to make those as the grades increase. And he's been part of the meetings the whole time, so everybody's on the same page. So we're, in the last thing is that we will be doing mock trials in March. After everyone's trained, a mock trial allows you to test the infrastructure completely. Every single student, every single person that's involved will do just like the real thing, but it's just a mini part of the test. So the state gives you a trial infrastructure that you can play with and do a mock test. And then the actual assessments will be in April and May. So I think we're on good track.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Can we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Questions, Mark?
I just am amazed that the state thinks that all the districts are going to be able to meet their schedule. And I just would like to hear various comments that you've heard from the various varieties of districts who I'm sure are quite challenged by this. Especially fourth graders, for example, and getting them to be able to use the tool, let alone take the test.
Yeah, I think it's a struggle for some districts. I was telling Brooke the other day and people at a meeting that some school districts in the past had to actually put all their computers on a bus and drive them to school so that the kids could actually take them. So what does that tell you? There's not enough instruments there, devices there for the day.
Let alone practice to get used to them.
Right, and I think the typing is, for a third grader or a fourth grader online can be a struggle, but it's something that Neshoba's been doing. We've had typing in our instruction for a long time. We didn't remove it, so we're glad of that. But and the other thing that is in Western Mass, they have problems with bandwidth. They don't have the same, pipeline that we do coming in and out. So that's why we use the caching servers, so you're not really using the internet bandwidth during the testing. So Chi was really good. I mean, his team set up a caching server that's working beautifully in every building. And we tested it last week. I took a fourth grade math test. She said, "What's about it?" So you do but anyways, I do hear complaints. People are nervous, but they also had choices to do waivers, right, Brooke?
Yes.
They needed to.
Yeah, but I'll be honest, I don't think many waivers are going to be granted, if any. I mean, it would have to, this is going forward and we're going to have to get on the bandwagon. We're just on the bandwagon, to be honest with you. I think we're in a great place right now for this.
So,
I have huge concerns. Mark kind of tapped it a little bit. The younger kids, like when are the third graders coming online for this?
So that would be 2019.
Okay,
So we have 2 years.
Part of, there's a lot of, I know you know, but there's a lot of white papers out there right now that are dealing with, like Burlington has one that the former superintendent put out, maybe current still. But it deals with the fact that third, fourth graders, they're not getting enough of these keyboarding skills where they might be able to, at this point in time, A, B, C, provide a one-word answer or something, but if they're required on NCAS 2.0 to actually make some analytical responses, it's a disaster, and that's my concern. So if the fourth graders had to use mice, that tells me that they're not actually prepared to take some sort of a...
The reason I use mice is because the mouse pad on a Chromebook can, it can be more of a struggle for them. So, and they're used to mice in the computer labs. We wanted to give them every advantage. The typing, they do a lot, our kids do a lot of writing online with the keyboard. And in fact, when we do test them, they're not tested with A, B, C, D, E, F. They're writing a whole paragraph within a certain amount of time and the software tests them. And I understand what you're saying, they're trying to, discern, but our teachers have been preparing them with those types of questions.
So you guys all think that they're all ready to?
Well, they're as ready as we can get them, but we will continue to work on those skills, absolutely.
Now, I want to be cautious because the whole point of this discussion was really just as a result of saying, here's the work that we're doing right now on this. So I just said to Lorraine, we may need to bring you back for further discussion. But at this point in time, for the purpose of tonight, it was just to say as one of my goals, where are we at? And this was basically to say, okay, here's where we're at right now. So, Chi, I don't know, we didn't ask a lot of you, but is there anything that you've got to add or no?
No, good man, good man.
That's all the back end, well, okay.
For me?
All the
On
back
the back
end,
end.
yeah, all the networking set up.
Yeah, we feel good about that. So we'll continue to keep you kind of apprised as we close in on the date, but I think for, one of the key activities on my goals is that we had to make this public, and so this is that opportunity. So thank you to both of you for coming tonight, I really appreciate it. There were two other goals. One was, and these will be short, to establish appropriate evaluation procedures for principals and assistant principals. And I told you earlier that we went after the assistant principal plan first, kind of wrapped that up, and today we finalized some discussion with our principal's plan, and so I think that we're all set. That doesn't mean that there won't be evaluations this year, it just means that it followed a bit of a truncated and a kind of a windier road than it would next year. Next year will be a little bit more straightforward, but the principals were so good, and they said, you come and talk to us, you tell us exactly where we're at, we know that we can connect with you whenever. So it was a really good discussion around the table today. So I feel very comfortable about where we're at and how it links and ties in with the DESE model. So I think we're in a good place with that. The third goal, and I giggled when when you go back and take a look at these and say, remember when we wrote this. By June 1st, 2017, organize and procure copies of basic contracts specific to the school district, appropriate school and district inspections, and lists appropriate to each center. And one of the key activities with a timeline, and I'm sitting here now, all these months later saying, oh my gosh, aren't we glad that we gave ourselves a year to do this, create appropriate filing systems for each of the centers within the central office. One of the things, I teased, but not necessarily, I'm happy to take you through, although we're not ready to really show for grand time here, prime time. Our basement area, we have been steadily working away at that. Actually, you're saying yes, for those of you who might recall, now SPED isn't on here, but I'm going to talk about SPED. If you remember walking through that, where all the team chairs were, do you remember the room I'm talking about? And you'll recall that the SPED files were kind of bursting at the seams and coming out between that space between here and the roof. Do you remember that, right? And so, that was one of our challenges, right? And Joan and I didn't feel comfortable about that. And so, I don't know if I told the story, but we just really didn't have enough files and filing cabinets to, did I tell the story? I don't know if I did.
No,
But we didn't have enough filing cabinets. And it's one of those things where monetarily you look and you say, well, Alita, let's see how much a filing cabinet will cost us. And I want to say it was like $1,500 or something like that. And we said, oh my gosh, when I know how many files there are just for SPED, how will we ever be able to afford enough files to do number 2 on my So then I said, well, maybe we start with something smaller. Let's take a look at where the superintendent files are located. You know where they are, right? They're in the freezer in Emerson building, under lock and key. And we generally don't like to go in there in case there might be, I don't know, little dead mice. Yeah. That wasn't a good feeling. And so when you walked in, and this is no lie, when you opened that door, you really couldn't even get into the freezer because it was just nothing but tall boxes. Again, I say, oh my gosh, we have no filing cabinets for this. And I'd like to point out, beside that freezer is another freezer. And if you walk in there, that's where all of our HR, Anne-Marie and Darcy, who've worked all last week at this project. And this has been such an ongoing, you have no idea. So I went to my friend Jeff Converse, our new director of facilities, and I said, Jeff, I need all these filing cabinets, and I don't know where to go, and I don't have $1,500 per unit. To which he said, I've got a contact. I said, you do? And he said, yes, I do. He said, I know where I can get a pile of filing cabinets. So I said, okay. So he came back and he said, I can spend $3,000 and we can get a pile of filing cabinets. Does that make sense to you? I said, please do. Within days, we had this huge Mayflower truck pull up, one of those semis, to the front of Emerson, and I had my nose pressed up against the window. You're thinking, you don't think that's filing cabinets? The doors opened, and there are all these filing cabinets in there. So we literally have plenty of filing cabinets, and I think that would be fair to say that went off this semi downstairs. It was very congested for a while. It's still congested. I think we've hidden a little bit of our mess down there, but at one point in time it was complete chaos down there. So we took the old extended day room and we started, right? And we said to SPED, let's get SPED settled first and let's do that. And so we went down, we created a vision. If you go down there now, it's messy now because we've been cleaning out the freezers. I'd like to point that out. So tonight's probably not a good night for you to go down there. But they are stacked to the ceiling, sort of sides of the ceilings right now. I take Don down probably every other time he comes. I take him
And
for
it
the
looks
ground.
different every time.
So anyway, SPED now, if you go down and it's under proper double lock, right? It's exactly in compliance now. All of the SPED folders are all in there. Everything is categorized, everything exactly where it needs to be. So we did that. So SPED was first and HR was second. So HR, that's you may not have even noticed, but along that back wall were all kinds of filing cabinets full of archive stuff. Those are all gone now. They're all down appropriately labeled downstairs now. We've got the one freezer entirely empty, and it's not all categorized yet. In the midst of all of this, we created a room for our town friends so that that should be ready. Dawn and I were talking about it. Probably in the next 2 weeks, that room will be ready for our town friends.
Our town friends.
Yeah. They'll be able to go down and get themselves organized because right now they're up on the 3rd floor. So I thought this was a small project. This was by no means a small project. But I have to say, when I go down into that room now, I mean, I know it looks chaotic right now, but honestly, it's looking great. So this small thing has turned into be just an absolute dinosaur, in terms of size, but we're working through it. So perhaps in another couple of months, maybe another month or so, maybe even 2 months, we'll be a little bit better organized to take you downstairs and show you how this is all panned out.
About electronic filing. The state still requires paper filing, and how long do you have to keep them?
7 years.
So it's 7 years.
Yes.
Committee forever.
School committee, well, yeah. What about electronic filing for that stuff? I know they did, the open meeting law had an electronic filing, and it was planning boards had to still keep physical things, but everybody still has to keep physical?
The other thing I would tell you is I can't tell how many, I think twice or maybe three times now, we've brought in the official shredder. And literally in fact, when we were doing your files, I think we had about 10 buckets down, all locked. Of course, they all had to be locked, right?
Yes.
And that we filled up for shredding. So we have purged along the way as well. So
there were things that were 7 years older than 7 years.
Yes.
Yes. So that's
So we
fine.
advertised, to pick up the records, and then after that, if records weren't picked up, we purged.
So that's in a nutshell. That's kind of where we are and the progress that we've made to date. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're
They're
going
they're
move
adults,
into-
they can come up with this.
Hello,
Yeah.
we're going to move into our old business section of the agenda. Budget discussion. Does anybody have any school committee questions about the budget, concerns? We have one more meeting. I think we're in a good place. We're going to go back, FinCom, and look at finalizing a couple little pieces. And then on the 15th, according to our regional agreement, we need to vote to approve the budget. Okay? The kindergarten tuition discussion. Okay, so in our last meeting, we looked at pre-K and extended day expenses, and the administration had identified that we were running those programs at a significant deficit. and that the tuition for those programs hadn't been reviewed in several years. Because those programs were, I don't like using the term daycare, because I don't like saying that, but because they are not tied to an educational structure within the district K-12, we voted to increase a bit of what the shortfall is in the program. Okay, so one of the areas that, there's a third leg to the stool, and that's the kindergarten tuition. So if a resident sends their child to the half-day kindergarten program, there is no fee for that. If a resident elects to send their child to the full-day kindergarten program, there is a fee for that. And again, when finance and the administration got together and looked at this, they identified that the rates hadn't gone up in 2 or 3 years, and that we were operating again at a deficit. So I asked to table that discussion until tonight so that everyone could get a chance to kind of digest what we had heard and where we wanted to be individually in order to have another discussion tonight, and I'm going to ask for a vote following that discussion. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
For the kindergarten?
Yeah.
So from my lens, I think you have a couple of options here. I know originally we had taken a look at all these 3 different cost centers, if you want to refer to them as that, and said, okay, what needs to remain kind of cost neutral? What are we comfortable with? What are we not comfortable with? One of the threads of discussion, and I know we certainly had this, both Joan and Cindy and I have talked to, you don't want to overburden those young families with babies, as they're just trying to get their lives started and everything else. And so what does that look like? But there's that piece. There's, Cindy and I are talking about it today. There's the educational component that says you want every kid that can possibly be into preschool or kindergarten to be there. So there's that whole educational piece. But then for me, there's also the management piece to say, okay, wait a minute, this is what this program costs. As Joan and I were talking today, if we had done a 10% increase every year, we wouldn't be sitting where we are right now. So now all of a sudden it becomes something that's controversial that probably shouldn't be, quite frankly. And we've had this talk around the table before, the notion that maybe every year we should be taking a look at this. And even if we say no increase, then so be it. That's fine. My concern, and I've said this before, is that, I'm concerned about raising the tuition for all 3 in 1 year. But that's just an option to put out to you, because if the truth is that you feel strongly, say, no, wait a minute, you know what, this should be closer towards cost central, or cost neutral rather, I think we need to do that. I'm very accepting of that as well. So, Joan and Cindy, I kind of turn it to you too. Are there any thoughts that either of you would want to put on the table for this? Any of this? I know we've had lots of discussion. We've probably discussed it to great lengths, but maybe there's nothing to add.
Myself, I just want to make first a comment that I'm not sure, Lorraine, if I misunderstood you, but the pre-K program is very educational and is in line with all the other, vertically with the other grade levels. We do have state standards, and we're following them up the line.
I think that, thank you for, thank you, my bad,
Right.
but it's not required by the state.
Yes,
So
correct.
that's
Right.
my point.
Yeah.
Right.
But I
And-
didn't
And
state
we have
that
pre-K
appropriately.
to really benefit our special needs students, so that's
Right.
really the purpose
Which
of
is
having
mandated.
pre-K.
Right.
Which is a.
Okay, if we're gonna pick it
Yeah.
apart,
Yeah.
I want Brian Boyle to come back up and Don Hawks.
Well, no,
For
and
goodness sake!
No, but I think that point, I think Joan's point is really well taken, and I think we can't
Yeah.
lose sight of that. And so when we man our pre-K programs, we man them with a certified special education teacher. And I think sometimes that kind of gets lost in the shuffle, so we just want to make sure that that's on the table. So anyway, I think that you've raised right now, you've raised both the pre-K number and the extended day. I think what's before you tonight is, do you go ahead with the third of kindergarten? Do you not? Do you move it, nudge it forward a little bit? Do you nudge it a lot? So I think you've got a number of different options available. I personally am not wed to any option right now, so I'm not sitting here saying, gee, I think you absolutely have to do this.
Well, but you have to give us your recommendation because it's your,
Well, if I was looking at it from a purely fiscal lens, I would say that you've got a program that's running in the deficit. I think you need to make at least that $60,000 up that we lost in the last grant. Cindy and I had talked about it earlier today. I mean, in essence, this is kind of ballparking it, but you know, when you take a look just at the pre-K program, the pre-K program alone has lost about $160,000 over the last several years in grant money to support it. And again, those are things that you need to always think about. Is the kindergarten lost money, lost $60,000, and so who picks up that cost? You know, so fiscally, you know, I think you can afford to move it up a little bit, but there's that other part of me that I so get those young families. So
okay, so let's open it up, let's all, like, reasonably open it up. Jennifer,
Just so you know, FinCom did vote this morning for a recommendation.
so you wanna share that with us?
did you break the tie?
So let's hear from, because you've spent more time with this, so let's,
FinCom voted for recommendation of an increase of 9.7%.
why 9.7?
Because 10 is 110.
It's a 10% increase is
It's
what.
$30 a month.
So a $30 a month increase. It was not a unanimous vote. But
We
yeah.
all know how I voted, right?
So it's currently 30,
3,100 a year.
so it's 31, and you're recommending it go to what?
34.
So what is that a month?
$30.
$30 a month.
No, total.
Well,
340.
340 over 10.
That's right.
310.
So it's additional $30 a month.
What's the
additional
additional revenue that would bring in?
it does not cover completely the $60,000 worth of.
Right.
It would bring in 42,300 more or less, assuming the population stays.
But again, like, I don't wanna look at this from the, are we trying to balance the budget? Don't we wanna look at this from the value of the program? What are the, well, I don't wanna go into comps. Never mind.
I think that my reasoning is we need to start moving towards making sure that the people who are benefiting from the program are also paying for the program. Because you have a population that's not benefiting, that's still paying.
Through their taxes.
Well, through their taxes, or that they are half-day students, and the full-day students aren't paying their additional share, so the half-day students aren't getting full day. But they're, even there, so what their parents are putting into the taxes and the budget, they're not reaping the same benefit for the other parents, of the full-day students.
Lynn? What was that?
I agree.
I agree with, okay, so I agree with Jennifer. Mark?
I'm in favor of increasing it a modest 10% and reviewing it annually.
Kathy?
I think if we've lost $60,000, we have to make it up. So that would be my recommendation, to tweak it up to that, to make sure that we compensate for that, because it's comparable to what we would do in the regular budget. If there were cuts in state funding, we would still want to maintain that level. But the other thing that I hadn't thought about that was brought up in the conversation on Monday night is this fact that other expenses have gone up in terms of people's salary and health insurance, and the district has covered those with no increase. So I'm not saying, I mean, ideally, if we could cover the whole thing and make it cost neutral, that would be the ideal. I'm not advocating for that, but at the very least, I think we need to compensate for that $60,000 that we've lost. So I would be in favor of whatever it would take to get us to there.
I'm still against an increase.
Yeah, say why, lady.
Yeah, work us,
I'm
work
still
us.
really concerned about, and I know that there's no crystal ball into the future.
Say
but-
why, lady.
Yeah, right. There's no crystal ball, and I'm just concerned that it's been steady for a while, and that there'll be these bubble years, and then it like there's a chance that it may be free in a few years. So it's almost like for a few years, people will be paying more, and then I don't know. And it's for the same reasons Monday night that I talked about the increase in the pre-K. Sort of happening.
I just want to put on the table, make sure that we keep in mind that I don't know that we'll
No,
go
I
to
know.
pre-K, so I just want to
Yep.
be really clear that there's
Until
no
I'm thinking until
assurance
I
on that.
know. Yeah, then I feel like it seems
Nicole. Oh.
I paid taxes before I had children to send kids to public school. I know that this is an investment. This is not this is, like, you talk about how much we lose, like we're going to lose so much money on this program. Well then, what are we losing in first grade? What are we losing in second grade when people stop paying? We're investing in these children, and I know I'm preaching right now about free kindergarten, and that's not what we're talking about. But if I can't apply how deeply I feel about the investment that we are putting in our kids and trying to make money off of it.
Ooh,
And
that's not fair. That's not fair. And first and
Well,
second
and
grade.
I'm saying, this is as a taxpayer. I am a taxpayer.
Mhm.
I pay taxes to send all of my neighbors to school. And I subsidize certain things that, and school officially starts in kindergarten, and
No, it doesn't.
It's not mandatory.
It's not mandatory.
Well,
I
have-
just to be clear, I don't feel at all like I
I
say this with all due respect. I don't see this as money making at all. Not at all. I mean, this is just about a program that's out there that we need to kind of bring up to at least cover, like you say, Kathy. At least that 60,000 would be really nice, but you're still going to be paying for this kindergarten program either way. So it's not a money maker by any stretch of the imagination.
maybe I'm using the wrong terminology. I could very well be, and I don't think anyone is trying to exploit anybody else.
No,
I do not believe that.
Okay. So no. Neil.
I haven't done yet.
Oh no, really?
I just gave the opinion of FinCom.
Yep.
So I'm gonna talk out of both sides of my mouth. So
But you gotta make a, okay.
I am, but I'm gonna talk about the brutal reality of the free verse, okay? We have towns which are very close in exceeding levy limits at this point in time. In order for this to go free next year, we have to have a conversation about what the cost is for it to go free.
That's exactly
And
right.
then what the state is actually gonna be able to give us for grants. Even if it costs us $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, there is no levy capacity in at least one of the towns to be able to support kindergarten, and that's a reality. As much as that stinks, that's a reality. So the chances of kindergarten being free, in my eyes, knowing what I know, I think is very, very slim. I think we need to have the conversation, but I think it's very slim. So then the hard conversation needs to be had. What happens then? What do we do? Do we try to make it at cost? Because if we do, that's going to be crazy because we'll be the highest in the entire state as
Right.
far as kindergarten costs. So I see this as a conversation that needs to have a lot more than what it has had, which is why I'm still at not increasing this, but with the caveat that it's going to get blown up and reformed one way or another next year. I mean, it has to be. And we have to either understand that this is now a, straight out paid program, this is the way it is, and we have to figure out, okay, we're not gonna be the highest in the state, what are we going to accept as a subsidized portion of kindergarten? Because a true half-day is, according to our costs, it's like 40, so I've got it, but it's 40 some odd $100. That's not real. I mean, that's a very difficult price for people to pay. So I'm at I don't want to touch it this year, but the rationale that Kathy has, Mark has, everyone has about making up the difference, it's, I think, a very logical one. I'm going not with the logical business approach, I'm just kind of going with where I feel.
So this has been agonizing. This whole thing has been agonizing. Because I don't want to increase the rates. I just don't want to do it. I'm worried for parents. I understand that it's not a requirement, but at the same time, in our towns, it is, right? The demographic of this town demands a quality education. So then, if you're going to provide the quality education, but I understand what you're saying. So I guess I don't want to increase the rates, and I respect, because I was thinking 10% too, like if you were going to do it. And then I stopped and said, well, wait a minute, these are families and kids, and I think that $300 doesn't sound like a lot unless you're a young family. And I'd like to see the cost recovery on this to that small minimum, which doesn't mean that we're covering the cost of the program, but I think that that's too high. So I don't know that I could go beyond a $150 increase a month to be comfortable with it. If I could go there.
A year.
A year. No.
$15 a month.
It's $30. Oh, what is it? $150
A month is what you're saying.
a month.
So you want $15 a month?
Oh, no, she wants just.
Wait a minute. You said it was $340.
So it's $30.
Yes, yes, you're right. $15. Wow. I don't know.
You really don't know.
I don't know. I need you guys
Yeah,
to
that
talk
works
about it
exactly.
more. I'm agonizing over this. And I also feel like, the other two programs, I respect you, totally, and I respect what you do because I see what you do all the time. Thank you for including me. We just raise the rates, and I know it's recovery, but is it the community's fault that the administration, including the school committee, wasn't doing the work they should have been doing all along?
But is
it their fault?
Is it prudent to not at least try to make some up some?
Well, you gotta start, I understand that, but we did. And I can justify it for those programs because they are daycare. Sorry, that's all I got for you. So,
So, can I ask a question?
Kat.
So, if if the decision was made to not raise it, what is the per pupil cost that we would then be underwriting?
Actually, that's a good question. What is the per pupil cost? Yeah, that would be.
Yeah,
Are we underwriting?
About
right.
570,000, I think.
No, per student.
Per student.
So if people are paying currently now $3,100 for the school year, how much of the difference do we cover if it doesn't cost that much? What's the?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is we're at like points, in its ballpark,
I'm
we're at
asking-
like 0.73. Is where we are.
0.73, 70%?
Of the total?
0.7 of a full day
Is
free.
covered.
Because right now, we're so far
I
behind
need a
with the
dollar
amount that we
amount
get.
per child per year.
Well, we really should get that from the business
tell that.
Because let
office.
me tell you why I'd like it.
Mhm.
Because when I look at this, out of the 202 school kindergarten kids registered, or the potential registrations for next year, 188 say they want full day. That leaves 14 who are not. So if we're underwriting it for 188, would we then offer the 14 a comparable amount if the parents were willing to make up the difference, so we'd have everybody there? I'm looking for, I mean, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
It's not, in the past, it wasn't just financial reasons that people wanted the half days.
No, but I'm saying that part of my objection is that there are people who can afford it and perhaps people who cannot. But the reality of the people who are affording it is that historically a portion of the tuition has been underwritten by the school system. So my point is, if there are 14 kids out of 202 who aren't taking advantage of it, we don't know why, but would it make a difference if part of their tuition were underwritten?
I think both Joan and Cindy maybe have a question or a comment on this.
Well, we are offering a sliding scale fee based on their income. So if that is the reason they're not attending, in the majority of cases, they would call me about that fee. And receive anywhere from a zero pay up to paying 75% of the tuition, depending on their income.
So if that's the case, how does that sliding scale figure into what we're talking about? Because I hear the concern about families and the, affordability, but doesn't the fact that there's a sliding scale mitigate that concern?
There's a resource for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, like the regular,
So, yes.
Absolutely.
So,
And it's really a hardship, they have a mechanism for
Right.
receiving.
Right.
Right.
So
I'm sorry. Okay.
I expect the 14, it is because that they do not want to attend full day. And I know we have that, that very vocal group of parents we have had in the past.
And respectful,
Yes,
you know,
right.
I gotta tell you, when we get to that free K, which we're not gonna do right now, I have some, like, on the one hand, it's like, yeah, of course we want it, we all want it, but then on the other hand, it's like, 5-year-old kids, you're gonna force, that's not fair, the expectation, I mean, we wonder why kids are stressed out, well, we start them at 5 years old, and you gotta read, and you gotta write, and you gotta know how to do your numbers, and it's like, oh my gosh. So, another discussion for another day, but I'm with you on this. So did I make up for the other thing? But I see, this is why I'm so, and I'm usually pretty definitive. I don't want to, but at the same time.
But there's a mechanism in place.
I know.
For people for whom it's a hardship.
Right.
yeah.
And if that, yes.
I agree with what you're saying, there is that mechanism, but that doesn't mean that it's not, just because somebody doesn't qualify for that, doesn't mean that it's not a hardship for them. It means that they haven't fallen below that particular income
Sure.
guideline to
Right.
but it can still be a hardship on people, and unfortunately, they have no recourse. And so that, the bar, I mean, are we allowed to even ask how many families out of that entire thing take advantage of the sliding scale?
I think we have 34 kindergartners right now. Again, anywhere between 0 and 75%.
That's more than I
Hey.
So they do have an option, they have half day, which is free.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's true.
Unless they're Then they've gotta make plans anyways, because half day is not gonna.
Well, you're gonna have to
Half day is
find,
not
yeah.
gonna cover it anyway, so.
Okay, so, if there's more discussion, have it. If not, someone needs to, oh Lord, make a motion. Unless you wanna try to kick this down the road to the next meeting, and I don't know what we're gonna need to get out of that. Oh, this one's painful.
I'd be happy to kick it down the road.
I know, but we need to bite the bullet, it's killing me.
So I'll do a try. I move that we increase the monthly rate by $30. That would equal $3,400 on an annual basis for the participants in the afternoon kindergarten program next year.
One second.
Jennifer seconded, Alita. Any last minute? I've got 2 educators on the school committee. Currently, employed as educators and they're on opposite sides. You're my go-tos. Okay. All right, all those in favor of increasing tuition by, God, $340 a year?
No.
No.
What? I get this right!
$30 a month.
Clearly I don't want to do this.
$30 a month for a total of $3,400 a year.
No, yes.
Not the
yes,
increase,
yes.
but yes, that would be the total.
Right.
$30 a month is all I, okay.
Yes.
Total annual tuition would be $3,400.
An increase of 300 a year.
Okay, all those in favor? Don't put your hands down.
Want a drum roll?
No, it's just, is your hand up or down?
My hand's on my face.
No, I show you do this. Oh, we have the quorum. Okay, and all those opposed? So now someone needs to make I know, you're gonna beat me after this meeting, I know.
So I'll make a second motion. I move that we increase it $15 a month for $150 a year increase. And that'd be 150 plus 3,100. So 3250, my addition is correct, would be the new annual amount.
All right, second, Jennifer. All those in favor? Jennifer, Lynn, Mark, Susan, Kathy, Lorraine. All those opposed? Neil and Nicole. It passes.
I would like the numbers for how much full day costs, it's excluded from the half day. So obviously half day students have a cost. But how much additional it is, and so how close we are.
Okay, Pat, did you hear that? Thank you.
Okay, let's move. So that concludes our old business and subcommittee reports. Neil, finance, I can't believe you have anything to report on.
Geez, not really.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
We have a lot of levy limit, future horribleness talk that we had today, but that's it.
Okay, great.
Everything's great with this budget.
All right. Personnel?
Nothing new to report.
Thank you. Policy?
Nicole and I met with Dorothy.
Oh, how'd it go?
It went great. Yes, she said it was gonna take 2 hours and it did. We got through sections A and B. And she's making some revisions. And she recommended the process, I guess, is that we bring each section to you and approve it in form, but that the actual, it gets approved as a complete policy manual, like officially approved at the end of the process.
So you're gonna give us chunks, so we don't end up.
So we haven't gotten the revisions on the first chunk yet. She said she was gonna email it to us, and then we're meeting in early to mid-April to go with sections D, and then D first, then C.
This is the finance. We asked her to do finance.
Okay, yeah,
The
that's
fiscal
right.
management. We did budget. We did administration budget, and we're gonna, I guess next is, let's see, sorry. We did fiscal management's D, so we're gonna work on that. No, we did foundation, sorry. School administration is what we're gonna do next, after the fiscal management. And then J, I think, is the one for students.
Yeah,
If we
that's-
skip down to that for the next one. She recommended going with C and D next.
Okay.
But J is what I'll ask for. It's I mean, that's a huge section.
Yeah.
But that's the section where the fee, I think that's the section where the fee, looking at the annual fees would fall. That's where the overnight field trip, all that stuff that we've kind of
That's
been
gonna be a
talking
big,
about.
yeah. That's the one I end up using most
Yes.
anyway.
Yeah.
So the process is gonna be, you guys are gonna bring each section forward as a first reading.
Yep.
But then we're gonna vote all of them together
When the whole manual.
when we're done. So would we do a first and a second?
What's that?
Well, we would assume after the first reading that there's going to be some revisions
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
the committee, but
Right.
yes. But I would think, and this is kind of, I think, how I understood it from Dorothy, after the revisions, the policy committee puts in the entire school committee's
Right.
revisions, then yes, the entire thing would be voted on at once.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, that makes sense. Good. Wow, that's huge. Mark?
So in this process, is there a modification of the existing policies throughout
Yeah,
this?
the way she did it was they look at our policies and the policies they have in existence. She lets us know if we have a policy they don't have, and vice versa. And then she lets us know if there's differences in if there's similarities in the policies.
And then we discuss
we just discuss
what's specific to Neshoba, you
Right.
know.
So that's actually that's a check and balance on one of the things that you, when we were at policy together, one of the things that you, and you were right, like don't create policies for today, create policies.
Yeah, we noticed that some of them had protocol sort of embedded in them, so, you know, she was good about letting us know that theirs was simpler and we could tease out why that was. So I thought it was and it took 2 hours exactly.
Yeah, it was
for those 2 seconds.
It was very productive.
Awesome, thanks, great. Oh, it's a relief of finally happening, right? Thank you so much. Okay, CPAC no report, tech committee. Neil, you don't have a report on tech committee, do you?
No, they met actually, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, I was
Yep.
not there, I had an engagement.
Okay, and then, that's it. In correspondence, I've gotten some questions about, the increases in the rates for pre-KK and extended day. Has anybody else gotten any? No?
Yep.
Neil does.
Neil has, oh, that's right, you have.
It's the Bolton
Sure. It's the Bolton people, yeah. And so, any comments, questions on the meeting minutes from February 27th? Okay, you ready, Lena? No, Lena's gotta take them. And if you don't have them, we can hold off on voting on these until the 15th so that you can send in your edits. You can put them in track changes, Lynn, okay?
Yeah.
Don't forget. Okay, so we're gonna hold off, Alita, we'll just we'll put that, the February 27th minutes, if we could put those in the packet for the 15th. Thank you. Warrants are all set for March 3rd. And then, items for next agenda, Kathy.
I'd like to be able to schedule a workshop on writing the superintendent's evaluation. So I'll talk to Dorothy and get some dates. It would be helpful if we could just have a preliminary conversation about if people would like it on a separate day or prior to a school committee meeting.
How many hours?
But just about an hour.
I wonder, let's take a look at the schedule of the things that we've got to address. I know school choice has to be done soon and a couple of other things, but
We want to look at that for next time.
we might be able to look at one of our regularly scheduled meetings and taking an hour, because we're gonna be, you know, I think now that the, well,
Yeah.
Well, and also, well, just maybe we could make it coincide, because Dorothy is meeting with us before a regular school committee meeting, so maybe we could just tag her on to the end of a
That's a good
policy
idea.
meeting.
that's
So
a great
we
idea,
could-
so maybe you guys can, touch base and then let me know, and then I'll slot you in, I'll slot it in.
April 12th.
April, we don't have, do we have a meeting in April? Let's do that, let's
What
just,
time does she meet with you folks?
4 to 6.
4 to 6. So would we want to do 6 to 7?
yeah,
Okay, April 12th, I'll see, all right.
yeah.
We
That's
should
great.
probably ask Dorothy if she's up.
Yeah, we should
Yeah,
probably ask.
No, I'll email her, but I know that I had thrown the idea out to her, and she said she's happy to do it. And that would be good, that would give us plenty of time, because talk about kicking something down the road, this is something that we've...
Yeah, agreed. Okay.
Okay.
And then I think, that's it. So, do I have a motion to adjourn?
No executive session.
Oh, sugar, like I'm trying to get out of it.
Anne Marie's here for that.
Anne Marie's here, I'm trying to get out of
Okay,
it,
so
I'm sorry. All right, so, thank you all for coming.
Wait, I have to move us into executive.
Oh, okay.
We don't
Well,
kick
that's-
people out until we've done the, until we've moved motion to.
Well, you could have said it by now, but go ahead.
I move we enter executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Section 30A, subsection 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for units A and C in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body. And the chair so declares the committee will not reconvene in open session, and Anne Marie and the superintendent will remain.
Oh, excellent,
Second.
thank you.
How's that?
And Kathy seconded. Roll call, Nicole,
Yes.
Susan, Kathy, Lorraine, yes, Mark.
Yes.
Lynn, Jennifer,
Yes.
and Neil. All right, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.